All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 4A is the 603 Jefferson Avenue project. It's an application to construct an 8-story mixed-use building with, it's actually now 91 residential condominiums and 4,500 square feet of retail space within the downtown precise plan area. The HRAC will consider and make a recommendation to the Planning Commission on the potential for impacts to the designated historic resource located at 620 Jefferson Avenue, the Hanson Lumber Company employee housing. So as I just stated, but again, the proposed project at 603 Jefferson Avenue is a contemporary style 8-story building with 91 residential condominiums located on floors 2 through 8 and 4,500 square feet of retail on the ground floor. The Jefferson Avenue facade would feature 2 entrances to the retail space and a garage entrance that would lead to 3 levels of below-grade parking for the residential units. The Bradford Street facade would have the residential lobby entry and the garage entrance to the ground floor parking for the retail space. The surrounding land uses of the site are primarily office and multifamily residential, and development of this site is regulated by the downtown precise plan. The project site, shown on the screen here tonight, is an approximately half-acre parcel located at the intersection of Jefferson and Bradford. As also shown on the map here on the screen, the project site is located directly across the street from 620 Jefferson Avenue, a property identified in the downtown precise plan as a historic resource to be preserved. Pursuant to the downtown precise plan, projects that are proposed on sites adjacent to historic resources must be reviewed by a qualified architect or architectural historian, as well as the HRAC for potential impacts on the historic resource. If the historian and/or the HRAC determine that design modifications are necessary in order to avoid substantial adverse change in the significance of the adjacent resource, then they are to forward recommendations for such changes to the approving body, which in this case would be the Planning Commission. Architectural historian Richard Brandy has conducted an analysis of the proposed project to determine if it will result in any substantial adverse effects on the resource at 620 Jefferson Avenue. A complete copy of Mr. Brandy's report is located in your agenda packet, along with the project plans and the proposed resolution. Mr. Brandy is here tonight, and he will follow staff with his own presentation that summarizes his analysis. Staff's recommendation based on Mr. Brandy's findings are that the HRAC adopt resolution number 16-01 with the determination that the proposed project at 603 Jefferson Avenue will not have a substantial adverse change in the significance of the adjacent historic resource at 620 Jefferson Avenue. That concludes my presentation, and I'll get Mr. Brandy set up right now.
Okay. Mr. Brandy?
Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Richard Brandy. I'm an architectural historian, and I did a project review of the project to see whether there were any adverse impacts on historic resources. This is, again, just a visual of the rendering of the project.
Excuse me.
And my review is limited to really 2 tests. Does the project meet the downtown precise plan historic preservation protections? And then the second one is, does it have an adverse impact, making any of the historical resources in the downtown ineligible for the California Register of Historical Resources? This is a photo I took of the project site, which is not a historic resource in the downtown plan. This is showing the arrow points to 620 Jefferson, which is an A-rated historic resource that gets the highest level of protection in the plan, and the white sketch is the location of the project. So it's across the street from Jefferson. This just shows a photo of the resource. The plan requires as I said, a very strong protection for this resource. The entire exterior must be retained, can't be modified in any significant way, and then any adjacent project can't have an adverse impact. And in this case, it means making the resource no longer eligible for the California Register. That would be an adverse impact. And under the downtown plan, the project doesn't move, alter, or demolish the resource, so it meets that first test. Then the question becomes, well, that's all well and good, but what if somehow this project would affect the historic integrity of the resource such that it no longer would be eligible for the California Register? Okay. There are 7 aspects of historic integrity, and I'm not going to read the list, but there are these 7. There is no, since it doesn't touch the resource, there's no effect on 4 out of the 7 aspects of historic integrity. So that leaves 3 aspects of historic integrity that need to have some treatment analysis of. Those are setting, feeling, and association, and these are these are sort of attributes of where the resource is either located or the setting in which it exists. The key thing in this slide and in all of these cases is whether the setting, feeling, and association are affected by the project, but the question is not whether it affects the historic setting, because that has already been changed, as I'll get to a little bit later. There's already a contemporary setting, which is not historic. The historic setting, feeling, and associations changed quite a bit since earlier in Redwood City's history. This is the late 1880s in this general area courthouse square. Just showing in 1925, the city's changed a bit. It's still pretty low, one-story buildings, pretty much. In 1948, that red dot is the approximate location where the project is, which is right over or in front of Redwood Creek, which you can see even in 1948, there was I assume it was a PG&E gas holder on the block as well. This is a contemporary aerial just showing the area and how it's changed even from 1948. But the key question is that when the downtown plan was adopted, the resource, 620 Jefferson, was given an A rating as a historic resource with the, mainly because the 4 aspects of integrity, location, design, materials, and workmanship, were intact. They haven't changed over time. The setting has, and the feeling and association of the area, but that's not, that was okay. You could still make it a historic resource. So because there are no change, this project has no changes to those 4 aspects of integrity, and the historic setting, feeling, and association has already changed, and it changed at the time of the adoption of the plan. The project doesn't change the historic nature of these 3 attributes. It does change perhaps the contemporary nature, although it's that whole area is changing every day. But in any case, the conclusion is that the project will not have an impact on the historic integrity of 620 Jefferson. It will still be eligible for listing on the California Register if this project is constructed. Now, then this is a bit of a just for full completion of the issues involved with historic preservation. The issue might be different if this was a historic district. Then the project would be evaluated for its compatibility with the historic district. And then we get into a lot of other areas, the mass, the form, the scale, the materials used. But the downtown plan is not a historic district. This is just a visual showing that there are historic districts in the downtown and around the area. But the downtown plan, the downtown is not a historic district for reasons that were thoroughly investigated in the development of the downtown plan. In fact, what we have is his scattered resources in the downtown plan, scattered historic resources. That's the approximate area of the project. So my review concludes that does the project meet the historic preservation requirements in the downtown plan? And it does. And the second, will the project have an adverse impact on the resource, making it no longer eligible for the California Register? And it will not. So therefore, there is no adverse impact.
Do committee members have any questions for Mr. Brandy at this point? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Brandy. I have a couple of two speakers cards. Vicky Telly, is that correct? Is that a T? Oh, it's you. Okay. Sorry.
Good evening, my name is Vicki Ely. I am the third owner of the property at 605 Middlefield. You have heard from my partners many times. I'm the quiet one. I understand that the plans for this building, the 603 Jefferson, have been sent back for revision. So after the architectural meeting on Tuesday, so I'm going to keep my comments short. My partners and I want each and every committee that's reviewing this matter to be aware of our vigorous and continuing objection to these oversized and inappropriately featured buildings being proposed for the historic downtown area. They are as out of place as the proverbial effluent in the punch bowl. Regarding the damage to the house across the street, you could define damage so narrowly that no damage can be found unless the developer actually destroys walls. Buildings are like people. You can damage them without touching them. If you create a toxic environment, the damage is done. This committee has an opportunity to take a stand, to protect the integrity of the historic downtown, and not just be lapdogs for the developers, as it seems the Planning Commission has been to date. We strongly urge you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker, Mr. Richard Kais.
That was given to us. Then to think about in regard to 620 Jefferson. If you read what was given to us when my wife and I finished that project at 620 Jefferson, you can see from the optimistic and very favorable wording from this committee, for the people who don't have one, the City of Redwood City Historic Preservation Advisory Committee sends this acknowledgement. You have given renewed life to one of Redwood City's notable early day structures. In addition, you have contributed to upgrading the community. Redwood City has a rich and proud history. The visual effect of the architecture of bygone eras is one of the most significant means of representing this history. Congratulations on your inspirational effort. Our house, our building, I went to the county records a while ago. They say it could easily be 1881, and the program that was done, or project that was done, showing many, many historic houses in Redwood City. We have one of them here. A lot of them on Stambaugh Street, but that also suggests that it was as early as 1881. So we're in the history with a lot of enjoyment back in 1988 when you allowed us to finish the project. But history is much bigger than one day at a time. And if you look at the Hanson Lumber House as history, I think you have to look at it to say, is this important in Redwood City for us to maintain and to keep in the limelight? The Hanson Lumber Company brought in a lot of logs, took them up to San Francisco, and right near the area where the fire station is now, there's a plaque on the wall showing that was a barging place where logs were taken up. And if you look at, they haven't been interposed, but our building, if you look across the street, straight across the street, right now it's a big parking lot. And this is where 603, the 603 is going to be in that area. And back then, I was wondering, look, when you think about history, sometimes you have to sit back and say, what was it like? We found like postcards stuck into the wall when we were working on the place to fix it up. And back then, it just had somebody's name. It said Redwood City, and it got there by the post office. And then, if you look out our porch, and it goes across the street, you're in that area where the fire station now is. You're in the area where Mr. Hanson had his lumberjack workers living inside the building and probably starting the day and looking out and saying, well, we have more logs coming today. And they look out and see it. And if this giant building gets put up, it has a very high height. And I was looking at my porch the other day and seeing how it would affect. And the morning sun that we have used since 1988 when we finished this, every morning I get in there, I lift up the big window in the front, and we use the morning sun, and we see out all day. So some people have certain effects, but I say this is a significant effect when you start blocking off the visibility and the livability and the usability of a place like what we have when it's been sitting there since 1881. I think those are very important aspects. Also, in regard to the connection of history, the Woodhams house, after the Hanson Lumber Company was out of there, the Woodhams came in, and and you've heard the Woodhams family before, and you know that the Woodhams house right behind the public library, apparently that's getting sold or getting moved or something, but that's been there for many years, maybe 1880s also. And it's not on this paper I gave you, but those of you who are around or have learned about HRAC since 1988 when we got our recommendation, our certification, Gladys Woodhams, a descendant of the Woodhams who had moved in like 1901, and Mr. Woodhams was buggy maker, horse and buggy type stuff, and he came into town, and it's 1901, 1902, 1903. He lost business because now it's all automobiles. So there was a historical aspect right there downtown Redwood City. And Gladys Woodhams, she's a descendant of the Woodhams family. She was very active when we were trying to get everything right with the fire department and everything to have that building built for the modern day safety issues, but the continuing effect of the recognition, seeing the house the way it is and how it's positioned, were continued. So we tried to keep it as old and as historic and tell the story to other people about it. And the Woodhams family continued on into other areas. I think one of one of the Woodham's houses was in Palo Alto, and she just died a few years ago. And that's kind of the end of the line for the Woodhams. But we don't want to have our building turn into the end of the line because of encroachment for no specific necessary means. First of all, where's the water going to be? I know that it's not a total issue under your purview, but things have to be looked at it. And the oh yes, so he was a buggy maker, and they ended up later, the Woodhams had chickens in the backyard, and they would take strolls down the road on Sunday. We had some photos there from the library, and it was a place that many people lived in over the years. I mentioned it before last year in other contexts. People will come into our building, and they might stare for a little while, and then they'd say, "I used to live here," because for a while it had become kind of like the Hanson Lumber Company. There were several rooms where people lived. So it's strong, it is emblematic of the area, and I think it creates kind of a pathway as much as possible. It creates a pathway for people that are maybe moving into Redwood City or coming to be at Redwood City because of all the buildings and the theaters and everything now. They come around, they can see something. To be cut off from light, air, and the sun, I think is an impact, and therefore not appropriate to build that very tall structure across the remaining portion of the building. There was also a photo that was put up there, and it didn't show completely the building because there's a giant city tree in front, but it has dormers on the sides, on the second stories, and that also gives more of a strong look and a historic aspect of that part of town.
Mr. Kreis, maybe if I could ask you to summarize.
Yes, I was going to finish that right here. I disagree that the determination of whether the historicness is affected is whether or not the building could remain on the register in the state. I think that was debated a lot last year also. So I want to suggest to the the board, that they try to determine any legal issue about that. I think the fact of the words, history, and the effect and the impact and all that are very important. And the other aspect is, before we bought this building, there had been another building right next door to it, to the right, if you're looking at it to the front of it. And when that woman passed away, nobody really took care of it or anything, and the city ended up taking it down. The fact that there aren't a lot of houses around, I don't think should be a negative to us, that we're somehow saddled with the fact that it's just one house. But there are several buildings in that area that, we discussed last year in a different issue. So I'd ask the board to look carefully at it, look at the true history, and look at the joy and hopefulness that was given to us 28 years ago or 26 years ago, for which we have kept everything intact and maintained to keep it going. And a lot of people to find our place, they reference it just by knowing, oh yeah, it's that house right on Jefferson. So I'd ask you to keep that in your thoughts, and the same type of wonder that everyone had and we're glad to have in Redwood City when we finished it in 1988. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kais. We're looking for comments from the committee. Just to frame this,